While straying from the beaten path on the way north to the town of Novak, you may stumble upon the ruined hulk of a wrecked car, half submerged in a fly-infested swamp. Though it lies in a bog, it is not your bog-standard vehicle. This one in particular has its own unique map marker, the Wrecked Highwayman. Longtime fans of the Fallout series, such as myself, recognize the significance of this vehicle because it is featured prominently in the 1998 classic Fallout 2, the predecessor of New Vegas. The protagonist of Fallout 2, the Chosen One, encounters this vehicle in a town called The Den, located in Northern California, quite far away from its final resting place here in Southern Nevada. The Chosen One finds this car in the possession of a man named Smitty, parked inside his junkyard. The car is manufactured by an American company called Chrysler Motors Company, an obvious reference to the real-life Chrysler, one of the big three auto manufacturers. While the name of the company is Chrysler, spelled as you see on the screen, references throughout Fallout 2 use the spelling Chrysalis with an A. This also includes the name of the song My Chrysalis Highwayman by Mark Morgan in the game's soundtrack. While one might assume this to be a spelling error, the word chrysalis actually is a real word which refers to the pupal stage of butterflies. The word originates from the ancient Greek chrysos, meaning gold, a reference to the metallic gold coloration of most butterfly pupae, as we see here. This reference most likely went over the heads of the vast majority of Fallout players, but not me, Mr. Avalon, not me. When it comes to the maker of the car, the Chrysler Motors Corporation, here is what the Fallout Wiki has to say verbatim. Chrysler was the most significant company to use fusion power to develop and sell commercial automobiles, primarily under the Corvega brand. The first cars entered the market in 2070. Reassuringly big and American, they sold out within days despite the hefty price tag. Production was limited due to the ongoing conversion of civilian factories for military purposes. The prices remained high, and a Corvega sold for $199,999.99 per unit in 2077. Chrysler remained a powerful company up to the Great War and bankrolled various initiatives, including a Museum of Technology exhibit on the history of transportation, complete with a 2-story replica of a modern fusion engine. Even post-war, Chrysler products have a reputation for being reliable and well-built with minimal upkeep remains. Virtually all Chrysler products are commonly found throughout the wastelands, many of them rendered inoperable by electromagnetic pulses that accompanied the nuclear detonations. Now, for context, you have to remember that during the time leading up to the Great War and the nuclear apocalypse of 2077, the world was going through a shortage of fossil fuels and other resources, and that's what the war was about. You might think that gas prices under Biden are high, and indeed they are, but I'm sure that is nothing compared to what gas prices were in the years leading up to the Great War. So it makes logical sense that automobile manufacturers like Chrysler would move their car designs away from fossil fuels towards alternate forms of energy, such as nuclear. And we see this in the various models of cars still cluttering up roads all across the wasteland. These cars are immobile and inoperable, and yet, even 200 years later, if they take just a moderate amount of damage, they tend to explode into a small mushroom cloud. This is consistent with the humor of the Fallout franchise. Whether or not these comical Michael Bay-style nuclear explosions are realistic is another story. As you can see here, Chrysler Motors offered a variety of car models alongside the Highwayman. But what makes the Highwayman unique in particular is that it runs on fuel cells instead of nuclear fission or fusion. Fuel cells create energy from the chemical reaction of a fuel, usually hydrogen, and an oxidizing agent, typically oxygen. Basically, the Highwayman is an electric car that runs off batteries, but the batteries are meant to be charged by fuel cells. Smitty requires a fuel cell controller in order to repair the Highwayman to working condition before you can buy it from him. But there seems to be a ludonarrative dissonance here, because despite requiring this fuel cell part to get the car up and running, the car still requires energy cells or microfusion cells to charge its batteries anyway. Oh well. Another unique characteristic of the Highwayman compared to Chrysler Motors' other models is that it runs on a fully analog system with no electronics. This seemingly minor detail has greater implications than one might think. The detonation of an atomic bomb creates what is known as an electromagnetic pulse, or EMP for short. While EMPs have no effect on most things, electronics are extremely vulnerable to them, and I think this is meant to be the canonical explanation for why there are so many ruined cars on roads all across the wasteland in the Fallout universe. While they may be otherwise fine, the EMPs fried the electronics in these cars and made them foobar. The reason Smitty is able to get the Highwayman functioning again is likely because of this fact that it is completely analog. To get the other models up and running in the post-apocalypse is likely either extremely difficult or downright impossible. This makes the Highwayman a very unique and valuable model of car in the post-apocalyptic wasteland. Fallout 3 has a reference to the Highwayman in the form of a unique tire iron called Highwayman's Friend. This can be found sitting on a shelf in Dominic and Machete's house in Canterbury Commons. It is substantially better than the default tire iron found throughout the Capital Wasteland. However, considering just how weak the tire iron is as a weapon, this isn't saying much. And Canterbury Commons is so far from the starting point of Fallout 3 that by the time the Lone Wanderer is likely to acquire it, there would be no point in using it since far better weapons should have been found. As a matter of fact, it is basically the same damage output as the baseball bat that the Lone Wanderer receives in the Vault tutorial, so why in the world would anyone ever use this? Still, it is a reference to the Highwayman, so it needed to be mentioned. As far as I'm aware, it is the only such reference to it in Fallout 3. Keep in mind, this is most likely a reference to the Highwayman model of car as a whole, rather than to the specific car the Chosen One uses in Fallout 2. The overworld map of Fallout 2 is much larger than the original Fallout, and has many more locations to explore. So, for this reason, the introduction of a drivable vehicle to the game was a very welcomed addition, to make navigating the overworld map much quicker and more convenient. Fallout 2 players may have assumed that this innovation of a drivable vehicle would return in Fallout 3, and in every Fallout game thereafter. Boy, were they wrong. Whether due to engine limitations, lack of development time, or downright laziness on the part of the developers, we have not seen the return of drivable vehicles in any modern Fallout game as of the making of this video. However, it does at least seem that drivable cars are meant to be canon in the modern Fallouts, An example of this would be the arms merchant's pre-war military truck, parked here at the 188 trading post. We don't see her drive the truck in-game, but the fact she operates her business out of the back of it seems to imply this to be the case. But the modding community has put forth the effort to make drivable cars a reality, and there are many mods available which accomplish this. But to date, only the Highwayman in Fallout 2 is canonically drivable by the player in an official unmodded game. After the Chosen One buys the Highwayman from Smitty, there are a number of upgrades available in the game to improve the Highwayman even further. There is a fuel cell regulator found on another wrecked Highwayman in Trapper Town in Klamath. This doubles the mileage. Smitty will install it for you. If you want the Highwayman to go faster, a junkyard hobo named Ratch in the NCR Bazaar has got you covered. For $1,000, he will sell the Chosen One a blower, which he has given the name of Claudia. This will boost the speed of the Highwayman. Finally, T-Ray, the manager of the chop shop in New Reno, can install a couple further upgrades. If you've seen my video on the origin of Vault Boy, the name of T-Ray might sound familiar to you. T-Ray isn't just a character in Fallout 2, he is a reference to Tremel Ray Isaac, the lead artist of Fallout 2 and one of the main designers behind the Vault Boy character. Anyway, as in real life, if you leave your car unattended, then odds are it may be stolen. If you haven't played Fallout 2 before, then I hope you are prepared for spoilers because I'm about to drop one. The one who steals your car is T-Ray. There are a number of ways you can get the Highwayman back, but that is beyond the scope of this video, so I will just say that if you want to get the upgrade from T-Ray, you need to resolve the quest in a manner which doesn't involve killing him. Once you do that, then you can buy a trunk upgrade to increase the storage capacity of the Highwayman. However, if you avoid having the car stolen prior to the completion of the game's main story, but it then gets stolen after blowing up the oil rig, then this will unlock a very unique upgrade you can get from T-Ray called grav plates. These grav plates cause the Highwayman to levitate, and this increases the speed while reducing fuel consumption. This is what T-Ray has to say about it.
Grav plates, these beauties will let you fly across the wasteland, and they have a recycling powered chip, so they barely suck up any juice. How do you like that? You want them?
The grav plates seem to be a one-off in the Fallout franchise. It is a very unique upgrade that requires very specific conditions to acquire, and most players are likely going to miss it entirely. Sadly, there is no image I can show you of this upgrade. It is only mentioned through dialogue. And then, of course, there are the effects of the upgrade to the Highwayman, but that's it. However, in Fallout 76, we do see so-called flying cars. Sadly, you cannot drive them, but as their name and lack of wheels suggests, they probably levitate just like the Highwayman with the grav plates upgrade. In fact, it is probably the exact same technology at work here. You know, now that I think about it, in the Fallout franchise, we do see various flying robots, such as the iBots and the Mr. Gutsy. While I had always assumed that the Mr. Gutsy levitated from the thruster that we clearly see on the bottom, the iBot model of robot has no such thruster, and yet iBots clearly levitate. So I don't think it's a stretch to suggest that iBots make use of the same technology as the grav plates. As a matter of fact, since the iBots are enclave technology, and since the grav plate upgrade only becomes available from T-Ray following the Enclave's destruction in Fallout 2, I think it's pretty reasonable to conclude that T-Ray got the parts for this upgrade from all the Enclave technology that became junk after the oil rig exploded. That's just my theory, and perhaps I'm wrong, so take it with a grain of salt. And that about covers the Highwayman upgrades in Fallout 2. So, what else is there to say about the Highwayman? The mechanics who work in T-Ray's chop shop offer additional details in some of their dialogue barks.
The Highwayman's a sweet car. Chrysler sure knew how to make them back then. Interior smells like someone took a dump in there.
Well, it is the post-apocalypse after all. Maybe someone has.
Interior smells like gecko.
For those who don't know, Gecko is a town in Fallout 2 inhabited by ghouls.
Not a bad car, but I'd rather have an Omni.
This line of dialogue references a model of car which to date has never appeared in any Fallout game. This line and another by T-Ray are the only times the Omni is ever even mentioned in the Fallout franchise. But it must be a very great car from what they say about it.
The Highwayman's got a full analog system, 800 plus horsepower, 0 to 60 in less than a second. Fast, the Highwayman goes from 0 to 60 in less than a second. The Highwayman's got the power, 800 plus in fact. Feel sorry for the idiot who left this Highwayman lying around. I wouldn't sweat it. The Highwayman's got a full analog system and no computers. None of that fancy stuff.
These barks confirm what I said earlier about the Highwayman being able to survive the EMPs during the apocalypse because of the fully analog system. They also describe the car as being very powerful at 800 plus horsepower. Anyone that knows cars knows that 800 horsepower is a lot. The typical mainstream car is only about 200 horsepower or less. The Highwayman is on par with very high-end muscle cars. This thing right here, Ben's Patent Motor Wagon, created in 1885 and regarded as the world's first practical automobile, ran at a measly 0.9 horsepower. Not even a single unit of horsepower. It had a top speed of about 10 miles per hour. It just goes to show how far technology has come. The horsepower unit of measurement was invented by the Scottish engineer James Watt in the 18th century in order to compare the power output of steam locomotives to that of the power of horses. James Watt is also responsible for another unit of measurement, the watt. What does the watt have to do with the topic of this video? Not much, but it helps me to pad out the video length, which theoretically boosts the video in YouTube's algorithm.
So I can make money.
The Chrysless Highwayman is most likely based on a real-life car, the Plymouth Belvedere by Chrysler. As we see the Highwayman in Fallout, it is in very rough shape. Whatever coat of paint it once had has been stripped away by the ravages of time and the elements. Hard to say what color the Highwayman originally was, but it might well have been a bright cherry red, just like the Plymouth Belvedere in this photo. The Plymouth Belvedere is an iconic car from the 1950s, and this is very
apt
because Fallout is based on a 1950s vision of what the future would be like. And this future is very bleak indeed, but it is a future that this beautiful car has managed to be part of, even if it does need a new coat of paint. The word Belvedere means beautiful sight in Italian. Again, this name is very
apt
because it aligns with what Smitty tells us about it in his dialogue.
Well, you see, I got this car, a Chrysalis Motors Highwayman. She's a beaut, too. They used to say nothing could stop a highwayman. Built tough, that's what they were.
A beaut, he says, just like the Belvedere. And not only a beaut, but built tough as well. According to Smitty, nothing can stop a highwayman. Well, except this small little puddle here. That clearly stopped it. Now that we know the canon details of the Highwayman from Fallout 2, let's examine its wreckage in New Vegas and try to piece together as much as we can. The car appears to have veered off from the nearby Highway 95. It is facing southwest, directly towards Wolfhorn Ranch, and almost directly at the nearby Brockflower Cave. Whether these locations have any relevance, I do not know, but more likely the driver was heading back to California. They could have veered off the road for any number of reasons. Maybe it was something to do with this other ruined vehicle nearby, an accident of some sort. Maybe the driver was intoxicated from too much revelry in New Vegas. Maybe they were abusing chems. Maybe they got jabbed with the latest experimental clot shot from Dr. Usanagi at the New Vegas clinic, and it caused them to black out due to a heart attack or stroke. Maybe that's what caused this accident to happen. There are many such cases. Or, perhaps, they were ambushed by raiders. There is a location right next door called the Highway 95 Vipers encampment, populated by a gang of raiders called the Vipers. We don't know precisely when this event happened, but it was sometime within the last 40 years. It could have happened as far back as right after the ending of Fallout 2, or it might have happened much more recently than that. The Vipers originated in California, but were forced out not long after the events of Fallout 2, as the NCR began to consolidate its power. The Vipers, as well as the Jackals, Cons, and even the Brotherhood of Steel, have all been the victims of the NCR's aggressive expansion. On the road from Nipton to Novak, the courier encounters several ambushes by raiders, Legion, and, if the J. Sawyer mod is installed, by deranged Bright followers. So, there is a lot of ambushes happening on this road. It is therefore very conceivable that the highwayman was driven off the road by just such an ambush, maybe 40 years ago, maybe much more recently. We do not know. In the vicinity of the Wrecked Highwayman, there tends to be some bloatflies, as you often see around these swampy biomes throughout the Mojave. Legion and NCR are also particularly active in this area, and you will likely see them engaging in a skirmish on your way to Novak. It is very likely that the Legion, the NCR, or both of them would be aware of this wrecked car being here. But even though you'd think the Legion, NCR, and or the nearby Vipers would be aware of this car, none of them seem to have looted it of the items it contains. Or, at least they didn't loot everything. The top of the trunk of the car is missing, exposing the contents to the elements. This is a reference by the developers to a bug that often occurred with the Highwayman in Fallout 2. In the vanilla unmodded game, The only notable loot item you'll find here is a rare Sunset Sarsaparilla Star bottle cap. In addition, you'll find a bunch of MFC and small energy cells. This is a reference to the fact that you need these to charge the Highwayman's battery. You will also find some scrap metal and other minor junk. There is also a footlocker where some minor loot may spawn in, and that is going to be random. When you approach the location of the Wrecked Highwayman, one of two songs will play. Either My Chrysalis Highwayman or Gold Slouch. Both of these tracks are from the Fallout 2 soundtrack by Mark Morgan. In Fallout 2, My Chrysalis Highwayman would play when you traverse the overworld map in the Highwayman, and Gold Slouch played in the town of Redding. Here in New Vegas, these tracks play here at the Wrecked Highwayman and nowhere else in the entire game. It is obvious why My Chrysalis Highwayman would play here, but why would a track associated with Redding play here? Is this meant to be a hint of some sort? As I explained previously, the word chrysalis comes from the Greek word chrysos, which means gold, and the other track is Gold Slouch, so both of the song titles reference gold. Is this supposed to be a clue of something? Or am I reading too deeply into this? Anyway, if there ever was any gold in the trunk of this car, it is long gone now. All that remains is this minor loot. But if you happen to have the J. Sawyer mod installed, as I do, then the loot you'll find here becomes much more significant. Now, you may ask, why would I talk about mods in a lore video? Mods aren't canon, right? And normally, you would be right. Only unscrupulous Fallout YouTubers use mods in lore videos. But unlike literally every other mod in existence, the J. Sawyer mod is unique in that it was created by the director of New Vegas himself, Josh Sawyer. When a mod is made by the actual creator of the game, then that gives the mod a lot more weight, if not making it outright canon. Anyway, so let me tell you what you find here with the J. Sawyer mod installed. In addition to everything else you'd normally find, you also find the weathered 10mm pistol, the armored Vault 13 jumpsuit, and the Vault 13 canteen. These and other pre-order bonus items like it are normally dumped on the player in Doc Mitchell's house right at the very start of the game. It was likely a corporate decision by Bethesda or ZeniMax to give players all this crap right at the very start as a reward for pre-ordering the game, so they can make money. The problem is, this dumping of overpowered stuff on players right from the start breaks the balance of the game. This is a very common thing in a lot of games which have pre-order bonuses. Instead of players having to go out and earn this stuff, players are handed it for free right from the start. And also, what is the explanation for why the player character would have this stuff from the start? Why would the courier have all this? This is bad for game balance, and it's bad for canon. It is, however, good from a business standpoint, and so that's why Bethesda imposed this. But project director Josh Sawyer apparently did not agree with what Bethesda decided to do, and rightly so. And so his mod corrects this, as well as many other issues in the game. So I strongly recommend it. Just make sure you download it from the official source instead of some altered version of it on Nexus, because some unscrupulous modders have stolen not only his mod, but also his name, which they have usurped as if they have a right to it. But they do not. Additionally, in the town of Novak, you will find that gun in the Dinobite gift shop. This is another unique item associated with the Chosen One in Fallout 2 that can be found in the near vicinity, which seems to tie this character to this general area, and this has led to a lot of theories and speculation in the community over the years about what the Chosen One's ultimate fate may have been. A few years ago, in early 2019, I was a guest on a live stream with someone who is now a relatively popular Fallout channel, and I described to this Fallout YouTuber the fan theory that the Chosen One from Fallout 2 is none other than Nobark Noonan in the nearby town of Novak. Arguments supporting this theory include the fact that Nobark appears to be roughly the right age. In Fallout 2, players can set the Chosen One to be any age within the range of 16 and 35. As of the making of this video, there is no firmly established official canon regarding the Chosen One's age, gender, or anything else as far as I'm aware. However, the semi-official Fallout Bible, written by Chris Avallone, establishes the Chosen One's birthday as being March 23rd, 2221. If this is canonically correct, then the Chosen One would have been 20 years old in the year 2241, in which Fallout 2 is set. Fallout New Vegas is set approximately 40 years later, in the year 2281, which means that the Chosen One, assuming they are still alive, would be about 60 years old in the time of New Vegas. And Nobark Noonan appears to be about 60, so it checks out. Various things Nobark says, such as him talking about being taught a spell by a cave rat, may be a reference to the brain, a talking mole rat in Fallout 2, which the Chosen One encounters.
It's ghouls, I tell you. Religious ghouls in rockets looking for a land to call their own. Don't you laugh at me. I know a spell that'll make you show your true form. Cave rat taught it to me.
Another strange thing about Nobark is the fact that he has such a huge amount of caps when you play Caravan with him. The guy is loaded with money, and you have to wonder why that is. From a lifetime of adventuring as the Chosen One, perhaps. Some of his caps may have come from pawning off that gun in the Dinobite gift shop. Nobark has this strange AI script where he wanders around the town all day and he peers through the windows of a burned out house right next to his own. On the south side of this house, facing in the direction of the Wrecked Highwayman, there are 2 unmarked graves. Do these graves contain the bodies of the Chosen One and one of their companions who were in the Highwayman when it crashed? The Highwayman is a full-size car and can hold a lot of passengers. Some or all of them may have died that day. If Nobark is the Chosen One, he might have suffered a traumatic head injury in the crash, and this could explain his odd behavior. Even though he may have survived, he may not have gotten off completely scot-free. Of course, these are all unproven theories and speculations. I know some people love to twist my words and misconstrue things I say out of context, so let me be as clear as I can on this. I'm only saying these things are possible. I'm not saying I believe it. In addition to the possibility that Nobark is the Chosen One, it is also possible that the Chosen One is still in the Wrecked Highwayman to this day. That's right, the front of the car is so deeply submerged in the filthy water and mud that there could still be the body of the driver as well as a front passenger in there, and you would never know. It happens all the time. Here is a real-life example of a teen who went missing in 1982, and in November 2021, the car was found in a river along with her remains. For 40 years, she had vanished without a trace, only to turn up dead in a car submerged underwater. I hope this isn't the fate of the chosen one, but it's very plausible given what we see here. This video came into being as a result of a recent meme I created. These days, I've been too depressed to do much of anything, so making memes such as this is about all I can do. And in the process of making that, and the video I made to go along with it, I decided to take a look at the wreckage of the Highwayman, because I haven't played this game in months, and I wanted to refresh my memory and see if there was anything that might further support this crazy idea. There was not. But it was then and there that I realized that the chosen one might still be there in the wreckage. Dead, of course, and I wondered if anyone else had come to a similar conclusion. And so I searched on YouTube for any sort of lore videos on the Wrecked Highwayman. To my surprise, Oxhorn's lore video on the Wrecked Highwayman wasn't the very first search result. As a matter of fact, it appears that Oxhorn seems to have never made a lore video on the Wrecked Highwayman at all, which is odd because he claims to cover all the locations of all the Fallout games, and his fans love to say how hard-working he is, etc. How could he have not covered the lore of this location? But, aside from him, it also seems that no one really has covered this topic in any meaningful depth, so I realized, were I to make such a video, I would be cornering the Wrecked Highwayman lore market because no one else is doing it. And so I undertook the Herculean task of making this video. And though others may come in the future, and though they may steal some of the ideas and theories which I've expounded upon, and though their videos may get 100 times more views than mine with the same ideas they've stolen from me, as is often the case, let the record show that I was the first. So, until now, there were no in-depth 40-plus minute lore videos on the Wrecked Highwayman, but there is a short 1.5 minute video by Tks-Mantis about the truth behind it. Tks-Mantis is the Fallout YouTuber I referred to earlier, whom I had done a live stream with over 3 years ago, where I explained to him the very theory which he now seeks to debunk. And without any mention of me at all, by the way, Tks-Mantis has long ago removed the live stream in question, along with many other videos he once had on his channel. And since his channel became big, he has ghosted me. It's a hell of a way to treat a friend. Anyway, sorry for getting off topic there. As for his video about the truth behind the Wrecked Highwayman, apparently Chris Avallone, the project director of Fallout 2 and one of the writers behind New Vegas, had this to say on Twitter. Quote, "Just for fun. But that would have been a good idea. We did have a plan for a special encounter in Van Buren where you could find the Corvega's trunk since it could, go missing. But alas, wink." I've made 2 videos talking about Chris Avallone. Feel free to watch them if you want more context regarding some of the controversy between him and his former team at Obsidian. Basically, he is no longer working at the studio. I hope that this will one day change, but it seems there is some bad blood between him and various people. And as far as I can tell, this bad blood is one-sided, by which I mean that Chris hates these people, but from their end, they praise Chris and want him to come back, but Chris won't have it. And that's his choice. If he would be willing to drop his one-sided grudge, then he could probably be back working there tomorrow, but it's entirely up to him. But anyway, since Chris isn't working at Obsidian, or at Bethesda for that matter, then what he says should be taken with a grain of salt. Yes, he was the project director for Fallout 2, but he wasn't the project director of New Vegas. Yes, he was one of the writers in New Vegas, but there were also several others. There exists this persistent myth in the Fallout community that Chris Avallone is some sort of god of Fallout, or that he single-handedly is the reason for New Vegas's greatness. This is simply not true, and this is unfair to all the others who worked on it, who frankly did more than he did, at least on the whole. So, despite what Chris Avallone said in response to Tks-Mantis' question, there currently does not seem to be any official established canon on the fate of the Chosen One. I wouldn't be surprised if this is something that Chris has thought about a lot these last 24 years since he made Fallout 2. I'm sure he has some idea in mind, and I would love to hear what that is. But no matter what Chris's take on the Chosen One is, he doesn't have the authority to decide what the canon is. That ball is either in Obsidian's or Bethesda's court. If they make the decision that Nobark is the Chosen One, then it wouldn't really matter what Chris says, now would it? So, Chris's tweets don't really debunk anything as far as the Chosen One's fate goes, because Chris doesn't get to make that call. Maybe Josh Sawyer is the one that Tks-Mantis should have asked this question to. He was not only the project director of New Vegas, but also of Van Buren, which would have been Interplay's Fallout 3, and is what New Vegas is heavily based off of. Furthermore, based on this old post which Josh made on Formspring, it was actually his decision to place the Wrecked Highwayman in New Vegas. So, wouldn't Josh Sawyer be the more authoritative source to have asked this question? Ultimately, even he himself could be overridden by someone higher up at the corporate ladder. But, unlike Chris, at least he still actually works at the relevant studio. Anyway, I think I've pretty much covered all that needed to be said on the matter, and then some. The mystery of the Wrecked Highwayman and the ultimate fate of the Chosen One remain just that, mysteries. But I've provided my own theories and speculation. What are yours? Let me know in the comments below. Earlier in the video, I explained that chrysalis referred to the pupal stage of butterflies. Perhaps the Wrecked Highwayman could be thought of as a sort of cocoon that the Chosen One shed after undergoing a sort of metamorphosis. The Chosen One left their cocoon behind in that swamp, but where did they go, and what did they become? The only things we can say for certain is that the Chosen One is roughly 60 years of age, and that their trail goes cold in the town of Novak. Maybe Chris Avallone is right about it not being Nobark, but then again, who says that the Chosen One has to be male?
Well, welcome to you. You look tired from the road. Why don't you relax a spell? Let this fine town take care of you. Oh, what am I doing? I got to thinking about making a good impression and plain forgot to tell you my name. I'm Jeannie May. I take care of folks here at the motel, long as they aren't troublemakers.